She was last seen walking toward her front door, safe in her own neighborhood. But by morning, she was gone. No car leaving the driveway, no footprints leading away, just drops of blood on the porch and a security camera that suddenly stopped recording. This wasn't just a missing person case. Something terrifying had happened in the middle of the night when 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished from her own home. And to this day, the mystery still haunts investigators. Nancy Guthrie was known as a warm and kind grandmother. At 84 years old, she lived a quiet life in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona. Friends described her as cheerful, thoughtful, and deeply devoted to her family. She enjoyed gardening, spending time with loved ones, and attending church events. Despite her age, Nancy remained independent and mentally sharp. She had lived in the same peaceful neighborhood for many years. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, is a well-known television journalist. But beyond the public spotlight, Nancy was simply a loving mother and grandmother who valued her peaceful routine. Nothing about her life suggested she would suddenly disappear. The evening of January 31st started like any other. Nancy had spent time with family before returning home later that night. It was around 9:48 p.m. when she was dropped off at her house. The neighborhood was quiet. Streetlights glowed softly over the calm suburban streets. Inside her home, Nancy prepared for bed. Her medications were placed on the table nearby, just as she always did before going to sleep. Everything seemed normal. But sometime after midnight, something changed. At exactly 1:47 a.m., her doorbell security camera suddenly stopped recording. Moments later, the monitoring connection to her pacemaker also stopped transmitting. Those two silent signals would become the final digital traces of Nancy Guthrie that night. The following morning, Nancy's absence quickly raised alarm. Friends from her church expected her to participate in an online event, but she never appeared. Family members went to check on her. What they discovered outside the house was deeply unsettling. On the front porch, investigators found small droplets of blood. Her doorbell camera had been removed. Inside the house, nothing appeared to be stolen. Her medications were untouched, and Nancy herself was nowhere to be found. The quiet home instantly became the center of a major investigation. Authorities quickly determined this was not a voluntary disappearance. Nancy didn't drive long distances. She had no history of wandering or leaving home unexpectedly. Most importantly, the blood found on the porch matched her DNA. This suggested that a violent confrontation had taken place. Investigators began collecting every piece of evidence they could find. They searched the neighborhood for surveillance footage. Doorbell cameras, street cameras, and security systems were all examined carefully. That's when investigators discovered something chilling. Footage captured a mysterious figure near Nancy's home during the night. The person appeared to be wearing a mask and dark clothing. They carried a backpack and moved cautiously through the area. But the footage was unclear. The person's identity could not be determined. DNA evidence was also recovered from gloves found near the property. However, when investigators ran the DNA through criminal databases, it produced no match. The suspect remained completely unidentified. Search teams began combing through nearby desert terrain. Helicopters scanned the landscape from above. Volunteers joined the search, hoping to find any sign of Nancy. But day after day, the search turned up nothing. As news of the disappearance spread, the case gained national attention. Thousands of tips began pouring in from the public. Online communities started analyzing every detail. Unfortunately, not all of that attention helped the investigation. Rumors and false accusations began circulating on social media. One local man was wrongly accused by online sleuths. His name and personal information spread across the internet. Despite having no connection to the crime, he became the target of harassment and threats. Authorities later confirmed he was not a suspect. Meanwhile, investigators revealed something even more unsettling. They believed they understood the possible motive behind the crime, but they refused to reveal those details publicly. And perhaps the most chilling statement came from law enforcement. They warned that the person responsible could potentially strike again, meaning whoever took Nancy Guthrie might still be out there. Weeks passed as investigators followed thousands of leads. Search teams expanded their efforts across multiple areas. A large reward was offered for information that could lead to answers. Despite these efforts, the case remained unsolved. No arrests were made, no suspect was identified, and Nancy Guthrie was never found. Investigators continue to analyze evidence and follow new tips, but the truth behind that night remains hidden. An elderly woman vanished from her own home. A masked figure appeared on camera. Blood was left behind on the porch, and then silence. Somewhere, the person responsible knows exactly what happened that night. But until the truth is revealed, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie remains one of the most haunting mysteries in recent memory. Because sometimes the most terrifying crimes leave behind almost nothing. Just a quiet house, an empty porch, and questions that may never be answered.